The thought of moving homes is usually pretty exciting. Even if it's a little stressful, a fresh start is always good. Well, for John Sims, his fresh start was a little more than he bargained for, but an incredible journey nonetheless. John had no idea what was coming for him when he bought his new home in a midtown neighborhood of Tucson, Arizona. Whether you believe it to be a coincidence or a miracle, we've got all the details you need to know. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. John made his big purchase on his new home with a steady idea of what he was getting himself into. He bought this home from a good friend, which put his mind at ease with regards to the condition of the home. It was only after John had already moved in when his friend told him something that changed the game completely. He told him that there had been rumors of something being buried deep in the backyard. Now that John had this information, going about his regular unpacking tasks was themed with a constant wondering. Was he to just ignore the rumors like everyone else? Was he able to live in a home which he knew could potentially have a groundbreaking secret to tell? When John realized this was no job for his shovel, he decided to investigate the situation properly. John looked at his yard filled with possibilities and began to dig. He had no idea what he was looking for and no clue where to start. He randomly positioned himself and began to dig every day, through the heat that Arizona is famous for. Eventually, he grew tired and began to lose hope. After exhausting himself making 4 different holes, John temporarily gave up. Although John's body was tired of digging, his mind was far from tired of wondering. He decided to try a different approach. He tracked down the municipal records of his home and studied each page carefully. Some information he found were things he already knew. However, a rough sketch in the documents gave him a new clue. According to the records, a company called Whitaker Pools had applied for a permit to work at the property back in 1961, but the home didn't have a pool at all. Now that John had a better idea of where he needed to dig, he decided to change his approach. No more aimless digging of random holes. John then hired a team of consultants who had the proper tools needed for the job, including metal detectors, to get them that much closer. When the metal detectors remained silent after skimming John's backyard, he still refused to give up. One fateful day, the metal detectors began to sing. The experts John hired found 2 spots in the garden, which made the metal detectors go crazy. After carefully marking these 2 spots, John was ready to find whatever he was searching for. Now that John knew where to dig, he had enough motivation to carry on working in the hot Arizona sun. He dug in the 2 spots until he finally felt his shovel hit something hard. John had been digging around 3 feet deep. He began to worry that the hard surface his shovel had reached was hitting a septic tank, which could be tremendously dangerous. As John continued to dig, he began to realize that the shape forming did not resemble a septic tank. He had uncovered a substantial amount of the structure and began to gain perspective. The hole began to look like some sort of entryway. Where did it lead to? The possibilities ran wild in John's mind as continued to dig. John proceeded to clear the area in order to get closer to the bottom of the mystery. Eventually, he discovered a hatch with a lid. He carefully pried the lid off, but he knew he had to be careful. Although he was eager to go inside, his training as a fireman taught him better than to just enter a confined space. John also knew that he needed to have other people around when he finally went underground to assist if anything went wrong. After a long wait, it was finally time for John to find out what this mystery held. The moment had come for John to find out what made his house extraordinary. At first, it seemed like all he could see was a bunch of metal blades, but when his eyes adjusted, he realized he was looking at a spiral staircase. John was desperate to climb down those stairs and take a look, but he knew how dangerous this was. How much time had passed? Were these stairs still stable enough to hold anybody? So John had to wait even longer. He needed time to organize a team of people to be there if he needed help. John organized a group of his trusted friends to be there with him. He also came up with a strategy to enter the space safely. Their plan to meet the moment of truth was about to pay off. Luckily, they documented the entire thing. John and his friends made the entrance wider and reinforced the stairs with layers of concrete. They also put up a tent to help block the hot rays of the sun. John also installed an electrical line that would allow for the space to be illuminated. Also, he and his friends would be able to use electric power tools down there. John's past work as a firefighter gave him all the necessary knowledge he would need in order to do this mission safely. He was aware of how dangerous mold and gas leaks could be in this old, forgotten structure. The team placed a pipe in the entryway which would channel fresh air down into the space. This ensured they would be able to breathe properly and got them even closer to finally being able to enter. John and his friends were unable to make the staircase stable enough to descend. This was one of the most important parts of the job because no one knew the conditions of these old rusty stairs. So, John got a long ladder and positioned it in the entryway. It was finally time to discover what was under there. It was finally time for John to put his imagination to rest and finally discover what was in his backyard. He had been obsessing over this for what felt like years, and it was finally time to see the truth. John was about to be the first person in 50 years to enter this space. What was he about to find? I know my brain would be hoping for a secret treasure. John lowered himself into the confined space. When he stepped off the ladder, all his hard work was about to pay off. He was pleasantly surprised to learn that there was a huge room deep underneath his backyard. It was in good shape, complete with a solid floor. But that wasn't all. In fact, there was an entire system of tunnels forming a complex down there. The previous owner of the house was John's close friend. He had told him that there was something deep in the backyard. When John did his research, he found the structure was built by Whitaker Pools. This underground cave was certainly not a pool. The year the structure was built, 1961, gave John a good idea as to what this space was intended for. He knew it as soon as his eyes adjusted. Although everything seemed to still be in good condition, John knew he was a far stretch from the finish line. John noticed the fiberglass ceiling, which he knew could be extremely toxic to anyone who breathes it in. It can also irritate bare skin. The ceiling was also coming apart, which is too risky to ignore. This meant some extra work was needed, but John was nowhere close to giving up. The structure below John's home was huge, but it never had any furnishing or decor. It was obvious that this was, in fact, an underground bunker which was built as a nuclear fallout shelter. Many people had become scared during the period of Cold War hostilities between the Soviet Union and the U.S. and had built backyard bomb shelters for safety. John began to wonder why this shelter was then built by Whitaker Pools. John discovered that Whitaker Pools was responding to consumer demand during the Cold War and had added building backyard bomb shelters to its list of services. This was already common, as pool builders realized that building fallout shelters weren't all that different from building in-ground pool shells. Many of them expanded their operations accordingly. By 1961, one Los Angeles company called Catalina Pools had built 500 shelters. John's mind ran wild with what to do with this newfound space. If you discovered that beneath your house there was a man-sized hamster cage with different tunnels, what would you do? John's friends joked about turning it into a man cave or a wine cellar. Others who have found old bunkers have turned them into beautiful and modern homes, art galleries, and even recording studios. John was thinking a little differently. John then posted about his new discovery online. He was surprised to find that he was far from alone in his experience. His post on Reddit went viral, and he began connecting to others who also had backyard fallout shelters. His interest in these shelters and the Cold War era had ultimately grown. He even went on to make special plans to turn his own historical bunker into a museum of sorts. John started a GoFundMe page where he wrote, "Hi, I'm John, and I need some help restoring a vintage fallout shelter that I have uncovered in my backyard." He elaborated, "The upper entry needs a large concrete pour to secure the entry, and the metal circular staircase needs to be replaced." John estimated that the project would cost around $2,000. John further explained his plans on the GoFundMe page. "My plans are to clean up the interior, repaint it, and turn it into a really cool man cave, ham shack, and civil defense museum. Once I started this project, I researched a bunch about the Cold War period and how the civilian fears prompted many people to build these shelters. This discovery clearly made a huge impact on John's life. John has already begun gathering supplies and props for the museum of his backyard shelter. He says that he's found artifacts like water supply barrels, Geiger counters, ham radios, and sanitation kits to display. It's impressive that he was able to get a hold of so many vintage pieces that were in excellent condition to teach others. John is clearly using this miraculous occasion to its full advantage. This task obviously fell in the right hands. John knew that he needed to find a lot more financing before he do any real work. Enter GoFundMe. This was the perfect way to get the word out and the coins in. He pitched, "Hi, I'm John, and I need some help restoring a vintage fallout shelter that I have uncovered in my backyard. The focus would be on the upper entryway, securing it with concrete. Plus, the stairs needed a revamp." The concept worked out quite well. His story received more than 400 shares, and John quickly got enough to start renovating. With safer materials and reinforcements, it's a lot easier to climb down without fear of collapse. Now, the inside could be transformed into something special. It could even be habitable with the right techniques. A one-of-a-kind man cave would be enviable. So John continued his work. What did he do next? Not everyone has their very own bomb shelter, and John didn't take this for granted. But his initial idea of man cave seemed small in the scheme of things. Why not go a step further? In the end, he decided to make the structure into a civil defense museum. Restoring this civilian safe room would be a great memorial. Today, viewers can see vintage memorabilia like ham radios, sanitation kits, Geiger counters, and water supply barrels. Tuscan was a wild place way back when.